yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Welcome to episode 283 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NEIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. Many people would just call it the HBCU sports pedagogy. Yeah, I'm gonna add that.
I like that. I like
that. Yeah. Pedagogical philosophy of HBCU sports. Oh, yeah. We went to work today. We were in the lab. You know, we were taking temperatures of coaches and players. I just want to make sure their heart was in the right place. You know, somebody get faint around here. But I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper. Usually we're in the home of Houston, Texas Southern University, from Houston, Texas, but now we're in Birmingham, Alabama, Indeed. Sheraton, home today of the 2022 SWAC Football Media Day. Closing out things, so, you know, we'll start it there and just kind of go over. I want to get your thoughts. I'm going to start with you, Charles. What's your general thoughts of today? Anything specifically that caught your nature, or just did you have an overall thought process?
Huge media presence. That was the first thing. Definitely media filled up the large ballroom, but
over 200.
Yeah, I mean,
that were registered.
Exactly. It was definitely a sight to see. The interest in HBCU football. Of course, the fan interest has been there in terms of this conference for quite some time, and the media interest. So you had a lot of new entities that were here today, but there's a general buzz, general excitement around covering HBCU athletics.
Go to you, Mike. What were your thoughts of the day?
Pretty much similar to CB. As soon as I walked in here, each year we go into the season saying that there's a buzz. But this year, that buzz was magnified by a power of 10. I think CB said it, the media presence noticeably increased from previous years. Of course, it's gradually increased, but a just noticeable difference. The hype, the excitement. And
shout out to Andrew Roberts, who was responsible for a lot of that media.
Very much so.
So
being in position to get things done. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So that's the first thing that stood out to me was just the overall media, and then the engagement. So, the engagement between the players, the media, administrative personnel was very active. So I kind of noticed that as well.
And when you talk about the media, you're talking about your traditional media, if you would, in terms of your news stations. You had an uptick of that. There were some people that were maybe concerned with the SEC being in a different state and city, that may challenge some things. That didn't seem to be a problem. Your newspapers, local newspapers were here, even some national newspapers, your magazines in terms of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
Obviously, ESPN. Now they talk about the Anscape. It was here covering it from a national perspective, and that's just the ones that I were able to put my eyes on and talk to. They were covered here. Then you had more radio presence. I think they at least doubled the radio presence.
Sure.
It was 5 to 6 last year, 12 to 14 this year in terms of the room. So that was huge in terms of that media presence when you talk about it. And then the streaming rooms.
Yeah.
The streaming rooms were on full display in terms of people getting that streaming live content to the people so they could be here and that's including ESPN in terms of them broadcasting. But in between that, what we did, what BCSN, what HBCU Game Day did, even Roland Martin was here in terms of the presence. You had Block Sports. You have other ones that were in here streaming. And then you had the individual HBCU Go that will be carrying 12 to 14 games, I believe it was announced today. They were here providing takes. You had commercial takes, radio spots for HBCU Go for other stations. You had Tolly, HBCU Game Day. They looked like they literally brought the studio. I hadn't seen anything quite like that. That was kind of wild. They'll be here all day trying to cover up. He just said, what's up as he's packing. You should have seen him out there last night feverishly. Credit to all these production people. I don't know if people understand the work that goes in. These folks were in the day before, here early, putting things together, comments in their space, making sure things were particular and ready to go. And now they're late after the hours when many people are hitting the roads, whatever. Now
trying
they
to break it down.
and pack up.
Yeah.
So I think that was another part when you talk about that. Let's go on to the players. Anything that caught your eyes in terms of the players? I got one, but I want to see if you caught it. Well, two of the players that really stood out to me for a particular reason, but I want to see if y'all honed on it before I give it away. So I'm going to go to you, Mike. Anything you saw particularly with the players that stood out? Could have been clothing. It could have been what they said.
Shoes.
Yep.
I walked in from a distance, and I was like, what kind of – that was marketing, fashion wrapped up all into one bundle. So
that's that new hip stuff, too, young folk.
Yeah, so
that's when you know you start getting old when you look at it and be like, I'm not sure about that. It's clean, but I'm not sure if I can pull that out.
Sure.
So and then the dress code of the millennial, I guess, generation stood out with a number of players. I won't single one out, but they were sharp. They were really sharp. But the dress code, I mean, they were dressed to a T. But they had, kind of the fashionable dress down. What you call millennial formality.
Millennial formality. I like that.
So those two things stood out with the players. But Shedeur Sanders' shoes, and they match well with the suit he had on. But
it was clean.
So,
It's like you said, it's just different styles, but it lets you know the modern styles and what me as a young kid, and I know you got a couple in college that you bring it in and be like, what is that?
Exactly.
That's what's it. Yeah, he'd be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I talk about my youngest son about his dress style, and I come here and it's just like what they're wearing.
Now you know it's just your son. That's the good thing. You be like, okay,
not you, it's me.
Millennial formality. It's actually me. Yeah. Good point.
Charles, what did you see?
I think, and not to stay on Jackson State, but I think a lot of people, it was noticeable. Travis Hunter was in a walking boot here at SWAC Media Day, ankle sprain, but he still was able to make it to SWAC Media Day.
That was big that he pushed forward.
And with following around the Jackson State players and Coach Prime during the course of the day, I didn't get an opportunity to see a lot of players, but I tell you, the Grambling players stood out for what they were wearing.
That's the one I was going to.
And Hugh Jackson as well.
That's right.
So it was like, I caught that out the corner of my eye. I was like, whoa.
So for those that hadn't seen it, you'll see it because I'm sure the pictures come out. They had the G and the black on, but it was a tailor fit modern look, and it had the gold trim tuxedo type look, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Again, formality. I'm not sure how to explain it, but check and see if you can get some of the pictures of the players. We're going to probably be able to get it on for you before the show is over to make sure you get a picture of putting that so you can see that. They were clean. And that's the one that stood out to me in terms of that. Andrew Body has some of that modern style about it in terms of what he was able to bring. So that was clean.
I didn't know if we were at Radio Row or the HBCU ESPYs.
The HBCU ESPYs. All we need is a red carpet.
Red carpet, yes.
There's a thought. There's a marketing thought.
So I thought that was pretty good. So the last one before we get into our break, you touched on it a little bit, so I'll stay with you. Any other coach? Now we're talking about the coaches. Who were the clean coaches? And we got coaches with some style. All right, you know what I'm saying? And it may be slightly different, but it's there in their style, and they dress it up. So there's a couple of them that stood out to me. But I'm gonna go back to you since you started out with Hugh Jackson. What about some other ones? What about Hugh Jackson's?
Well, definitely. Whenever you talk about style and coaches, Eric Dooley and Ascot. You talk about
with
dress,
the pants.
Yeah, dress to the T. You know, I almost need him with
like
a,
you said,
with a little eyeglass piece, or something.
HBCU ESPYs, I'm telling you.
His
haberdashery.
Yeah, his haberdashery is on point.
Tyler Carr noticed it too. So, what about you, Mike?
Oh yeah, Coach Prime is always clean, but when I saw Coach Dooley, I've seen him in an ascot before, but he had Gucci label on the side, and and when he was talking to me, he flipped his wrist and you saw the word Gucci. I was like, Coach, you know you clean, don't you? He's like, yeah, I know.
I like this whole HBCU ESPYs.
That's what I told you. I had to go there. I was wondering if y'all gonna go there with me. Then Cornell Maynard with his Alabama A&M maroon on with the logo on it. He was really clean, tight fit. Danzy. With the beard, clean shaving, with the green suit on, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't necessarily a modern flash style, but it was very clean and cut. So you got some folks out here that will put you to shame if you're not ready to go out here.
Absolutely. You'd be hard pressed to beat these SWAC coaches in terms of dressing.
Absolutely.
You got some clean. We can do a top 5.
Board of Health clean. Exactly.
Top 5. So we're gonna have to see what they do in the MEAC. See if they join the same. I can't see that with Coach Buddy Pugh, but it's got to be somebody else.
Yeah, Coach Pugh. But I'm sure somebody over there has taken notice.
Exactly.
There might be an ascot that shows up Friday. So
they bleed it. Well, that'll do it for our first segment, our first break. I think we broke it down and let y'all know what was at least visible and noticeable to the eye. Let me speak just one more. We can't leave out the commissioner. Commissioner, make sure that he's sharp. He knows that he's going to be on television.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Exactly.
Did he have a little blush on? I think he went to makeup.
Well, they say they got to powder you for the TV.
He was powdered up and caked up and I think he had a powder blue suit on.
Patty caked up, huh? Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Hey, you got to make sure the light hits you just right.
Exactly. Just right.
And he every position he almost knew where to stand and had his best side.
He knew his marks, huh?
Great posture. Yeah. I don't know where he went to school for the posture.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness! I said these folks here. What, am I missing something? Let's get in this first break before we get in trouble. We'll be right back with our second segment next.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of you.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your family.
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No! 7 times the... Music, gaming, Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment! Because everyone deserves better. And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place
for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Hear the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, The Pregame Show, The Carlos Brown Show, The ONG, Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushion.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop, here live from Birmingham for the 2022 SWAC Football Media Day. Bigger and better than ever for a lot of people. Talking about that SWAC ESPY with the red carpet. I think y'all see a little bit what we're talking about. Y'all give us some thoughts and comments in terms of who you say was the cleanest in terms of the players. Then break down your coaches. You give us your top three.
That should generate some discussion.
Yeah, what the top three? In terms of your players, your coaches, commissioner, ADs. Let me go back and give you a little love for AD. There's one Ashley Robinson made sure that he wasn't left out of discussion.
Did y'all notice this?
I was just gonna give. I'm just gonna say we had none of the Charles and put a little linen, coat on.
I ain't gonna be left out.
He's like, man, I'm not running around all these folks and like not looking clean myself.
Exactly.
But let's get back into it because we did our projected orders of finish and people seen it. But I want us to break it down in terms of what we look at and break down our thoughts on that. I'll start it out, see how much I'll get pulled up on this. I'm going to start with the Western Division. At number 6, I had Arkansas Pine Bluff. I did a matrix, so I went down every game, conference, non-conference, and division. So this is what I have Arkansas Pine Bluff. Overall, I had them at 3-8. 1-7 conference play and 1-4 in the division in terms of what that looks like. I had Prairie View at 4-7. 2-6 conference, 1-4 for the division. Tied for 4th with Grambling State. That was 3-8, 2-6 in conference, and 2-3 in the division. I had Texas Southern at 3, 4-7 overall, 3-5 in the conference race, and 2-3 in the division. Had Alcorn State, the Braves, at 6-5. They do have a winning season there. They go 5-3 in the conference race, 4-1 in the division. Southern, I had them overall at 8-3, winning the conference at 6-2, 5-0 in the division, going undefeated division. I had their 2 losses to the Eastern Division. One of the things that was interesting me last year is just how much of a gap was there between the Eastern Division and the Western Division last year. I think that shrinks, but I think that gap is still there. Those crossover games, which was definitive when you start seeing this Western Division of what it did overall conference record. So we'll stop right there on the Western Division and see what your thoughts. I saw you frowning up a little bit, Charles. Prairie View, a couple of things out there.
Yeah.
But go ahead, speak on it.
Yeah, I just I think there's they've had a taste being in that SWAC championship. I don't see them falling too far back in the pack.
I know from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, they lost
in terms. Yeah, they lost some current, but the player they brought here, he was confident.
Yeah,
he believes that they still have, and they have, like you say, they have a taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
So in terms of the players, I want to make that clear. They are still confident, feel good about what they believe they bring to the table, including Coach Bubba McDowell.
Sure.
So to your point, this is my perspective in terms of all the losses or whatever. We do it on paper. They got to play it. What else?
Southern caught me off guard being picked to finish first. I know defensively, Jason Dumas transferring over there, as well as the defensive end coming back, who's former SWAC Defensive Player of the Year.
Well, you talking about in terms of what the media is, but I'm talking about your perspective. Let's get in our perspective, and then we'll break it down across that.
Yeah, so
I don't want to get too far ahead.
Southern caught me off guard being.
Where did you have them picked?
I had them picked.
I know you had Texas Southern too.
Yeah, I had Texas Southern too.
You had
Alcorn. Southern picked third.
Yeah, he had Alcorn.
I had Alcorn pick to finish first on SWAC West.
Yeah.
And it's just from the standpoint of I'm not sure what they're going to do at the quarterback position.
Yeah,
I know
that's fair.
Is there at Southern now, but how quickly does he acclimate to Eric Dooley's offense? So,
and do you give anything for Bubba? Bubba's been there. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Has
he gotten better?
Yeah,
I think that's a big question mark for me. Is a quarterback play at Southern, but pedigree program. I did expect him to be back in the mix, but I probably didn't have him picked to finish first.
Yeah, big jump coming from where they were. Mm-hmm. Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of that breakdown?
I actually had Southern, coming out of the West for a couple of reasons. They bring a strong team. You've got Dooley. I think a lot of people have confidence, including in what Dooley can do with the team.
Mike got the golf glasses on. He like he gonna go tee up right after. You gonna join it?
Get 9 in real quick.
Yeah, this is
sorry about that. I know you're talking about Southern. I didn't want you to get too much to shine because I picked Southern, so I had to throw it off that you trying to pick. Been peeking over on my grades, We put you. We put an F squared in your life for that. You do get too much.
I text you mine. I'm all electronic. I don't need a piece of paper. So like I said, I did have Southern pick. I didn't. I know the media picked Prairie View in third, but I had them a little bit lower. There are a lot of unanswered questions. They do have a solid team. They lose Dumas, Stubblefield, a couple of key pieces on the defense. New coach, new system. They may very well be strong, but I just didn't see them finishing third. Alcorn is in the football business. I picked them second. I think they'll finish strong. They just have their program has that pedigree. You just feel that they're back this year. But they have a very tough schedule. That's the only reason I really had them second. You could have arguably had them in a one-way tie with Southern. But they have a very tough schedule, so I don't know how they'll, negotiate that.
Man, you talking about that Prairie View schedule. Obviously, kick off with Texas Southern, 2-star quarterbacks. Looking at you, Texas, it'll be fascinating to see what that first head-to-head matchup between quarterbacks, what it looks like.
Trayvon Conley and Andrew Body.
Yeah. Then you have Southern coming into Prairie View. Coach Dooley coming back to Prairie View. So that'll be a fascinating matchup in terms of something that just kind of circle and draw your interest really early. That's going to be fascinating there. Any other matchups in terms of Western divisions, as we look at the division, it stands out to you that you interested in see?
Southern versus Texas Southern, September 17th in Arlington.
Game
absolutely.
Hey,
Arlington, Texas.
That was, I think that made everybody look over their shoulder with Texas Southern with that win, and it kind of damaged, I think, Southern going forward in the last season. I don't know if they lost their identity after that game or whatever the case might be. I know there was a controversial play, but that was a body blow to the Southern football program to lose to Texas Southern last year. I'm sure they will be primed and ready for Texas Southern. But a lot of us think that Texas Southern could be that upstart team.
Yep, if they fix some of the pieces on defense, absolutely. Yeah.
What about that Prairie View and Grambling and State Fair Classic this year?
Well, Prairie View's kind of had the better half of Grambling over the last 3 or 4 years. I think we may be seeing something a little bit different this year. Grambling brings a strong team, so we'll see what Hugh and the boys can do. I think there's still questions at their quarterback position, and we'll see what kind of defense they have. A plethora of transfers, so we'll see how.
Yeah, is Grambling back in the football business?
That's the big question mark for me. Is Grambling back?
Yeah,
that's the question. Now a lot of their fans believe they're back. But
well, they don't stay down for long, so at some point.
Yeah, it's kind of like you talk about with the programs, blue blood programs. You don't expect when they hit that bottom or go on a little lull that they don't tend to stay down too long.
Right.
Made the head coaching change that many people think that's going to help them, but the question is just how fast that transformation.
Right.
As we start to go back to the East Division, part of the problem with that is what Coach Sanders was able to do, Coach Brown was able to do. He creates that bar with the expectation of coming into a program, kicks up a notch really fast.
No doubt.
People forget he did have a spring. I mean, that he kind of played a little football. I know it was different.
Played a spring, and then we talk about churning. that roster churned
right.
tremendously after the spring.
But we see a lot of turning for everybody roster in terms of Southern, and so Graham, which brings to the point is how fast can they churn in a row? And there's some questions in there. But what if there's Bubba McDowell? As we get in the East, we'll have to talk about Alabama State. Eddie Robinson, he was clean too.
He was clean too. He got a quarterback. He can be clean.
He was casket sharp.
Yes, he was. So let's go into the Eastern Divisions and we talk about that. I'll lead it off. Well, SWAC West, in terms of the actual coaches and SIDs, this is what they picked. Texas Southern at number 6, 40 points. And number 5 was Arkansas Pine Bluff at 42 points. Not a lot of differential between those two. Grambling was 4 with 77 points. They did receive 1 first place vote. You had Prairie View 3, which goes in a lot of your thoughts, what you're thinking about, 82 points, 5 first place votes. You had Alcorn with 110 points, but also 5 first place votes. So differential between Prairie View and Alcorn is strong, but in terms of some that see Prairie View and first rented again is not much different than Alcorn.
Right.
You double it up a little bit, if you would, when you see Southern with 11 first place votes, 111 points, which is not a lot of differential when you talk about Alcorn State and Southern. You know, when you look at it, it's really close there. Again, to your points of people going Southern, Alcorn a little bit. So that's fascinating when you talk about that.
Statistically, if you look at that, have you seen a situation or maybe where you had that many teams actually getting first place votes? I don't know if I have the history, but there were a lot of teams that actually had first place votes.
Who voted Grambling number 1? I said they got a first place vote.
If I had to guess, you would probably think it would be maybe it's a Prairie View SID. It's probably SID than it was a coach.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
What does that one person know that we all
Exactly.
There it is. Let's get into our second break. We'll come back and we'll break down the East Division in terms of what I broke down, the records. This is where it gets messy for me or gets interesting, depending on what side of the road you in terms of that breakdown, and then we'll tell you what the SWAC said. So stick with us after our second break. We'll be right back.
That spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your family.
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No! 7 times the... Music, gaming, Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment! Because everyone deserves better. And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Dr. Cavil's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watts and Charles Bishop. We're gonna tell all the people some secrets, but that slow grind in terms of the smoke. Some people get a chance to get a little extra smoke in the cigars. Even before makes for a long day for some folks.
Makes for a very, very long day. Boy, that slow burn got to you.
Not just a commercial. Well, let me break down what I thought in the Eastern Division. I had Bethune-Cookman at 6-3-8, 2-6, 1-4. Although after talking with Coach Sims yesterday and today, I'm like, maybe I need to change that. I was like, listening to AD Drew.
Coach Sims that stared you down.
I'm sorry, Coach. I'm fishing sorry. I didn't mean that. I hope you didn't see that. That wasn't me.
The coach stare.
Ooh, us. But I got tied for fourth. I got Alabama State at 5-6, 3-5, 1-4. Mississippi Valley State 5-6, 3-5, 2-3 in the division. I have a three-way tie for first. I have Alabama A&M overall at 8-3, finishing the conference at 7-1, 4-1. I have Florida A&M at 8-3, 7-1 in the conference, 4-1 in the division. I have Jackson State also at 10-1 overall. Not quite the undefeated I'm hearing that they are talking about they want to do. They added the fact that they plan to win the conference championship and finish the deal with the Celebration Bowl. So they looking for perfection, 13-0. I have them at 10-1, close to it. 71 in terms of the conference, 4-1. The way I see the conference going down is I do see Jackson State beating FAMU in the Orange Blossom Classic to kick things off.
Okay.
But I see Alabama A&M losing to FAMU when they travel down there to Tallahassee. The major upset I have is later in the season, and I just think it's going to be tough to beat perfection in terms of chasing that and staying up every game. But that Mobile game, something just churning playing those classes games. It's something about not having that game at home that has me going with Maynard finding a way to get that game in Mobile, which means all of them would be 7-1. But the key thing before you jump in here, because I know it's going to be interesting there, is the tie break. They would all be tied. They all beat each other. So head to head goes out. The opponents against everybody else because they played each other goes out. So the third tiebreaker, my understanding, is where you are in the power ranking, poll rankings, right? My theory is generally what you have is you want to start up there because it's harder to jump in the poll. We seen that last year with FAMU. They had to go undefeated pretty much after they started conference play again, run the tables, and they didn't get into the top 25 essentially in some polls until basically the last week. So my thing is although that loss will be late, Jackson State will be rolling. They'll be so high in the polls. They'll probably be around top 10, right? Sneaking in, maybe edging right there in top 5. So with that loss, they're not going to fall past 15. So they're going to have the highest ranking. So that's going to be the tiebreaker that gives them the edge to win the division because of the tiebreaker scenario, ranking in the poll ranking. And I believe they're going to actually get home field as well because they're going to beat Southern head-to-head, one. And they're going to have an overall better conference record versus Southern, who I have playing for the championship game, because they'll be 7-1 and Southern will be 6-2. So that's who I got for my championship.
That's going to be an interesting game. Jackson State versus Alabama A&M. Some things that I look at here, that could become a de facto home game for Jackson State. Huge alumni chapter in the Mobile area, home of Robert Brazil, and we know Jackson State fans. They're gonna travel. That's gonna be a challenge to the Alabama A&M fans. Y'all need to come on down to Mobile too, because Jackson State fans are gonna make that trip. I think chasing perfection is gonna be something that's on their mind. But everything, as we all know, is health related. Jackson State, one of the things that I think goes unnoticed, Jackson State was relatively unscathed last year with regards to health, and they played like it. But dominance has been what has been preached all throughout the spring, all throughout the summer, and they have a different level of focus that is really jumped out at me in terms of their preparation, getting ready for this season. I know we all take a look at teams and everybody says that focus is, they've been locked, but they have literally been locked in, and it's a little bit of a contrast with regards to what was going on, coming out of the spring going into fall football last year. It's been remarkable to kind of take a look at. So,
I mean, you chase perfection.
You chase perfection. You're chasing perfection.
Because if you don't get perfection, you're still pretty damn good.
Still pretty
so
good.
I don't see nothing wrong with putting out there to chase perfection. Mm-hmm. My thing is not that the coach is not going to have them prepared. We've seen that. That's not going to be an issue to me. Do you have most of your kids, including Shador, in terms of being focused? I have no question. I think he has that type of mentality and attitude. They're going to do that. I just think in terms of overall team for college young men, it's going to be hard to get them focused every week. And as you know, it's not just going to be their level of focus, but they're going to play everybody else that's going to be pretty doggone focused too.
Yeah, they're going to get everybody's best punch. There's
you see what I'm saying? So that's the thing. So it's not so much of them. I mean, they don't have to be, but right here, if somebody else is pretty solid, your play can be the difference in terms of winning the game. And so it's going to be fascinating to see what that looks like over a course of a season. And can they roll it? The other thing we'll add is, I think your point was, I have no doubt that Jackson State going to travel. They're going to be there. But it's going to be still different than if they were at home.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
I think the other thing
not
is,
at home. Yeah.
If what we're talking about Alabama A&M is they might not travel, obviously, as well as FAMU, travel as well as a Jackson State or a Southern or even Alcorn for that matter. But according to this, they would be in the race, and that brings a different type of lather. And so I think if they're in the race in terms of that matchup, if it comes down to what we're talking about, they're going to bring some solid fans in terms of that area. They have a good alumni base in Alabama in terms of that. So I think it's going to be a buzz in terms of the atmosphere of that game if the projection comes out. Now, if one of them falls off a little bit, then you're right. I think that's going to change the dynamic of what that game looks like. But I'm saying if both of them in the hunt, which means you would have Alabama A&M coming in there with one loss for that matchup, right? In terms of conference-wise, right? Yep. They would have the 2 losses non-conference of one of those in terms of being 8-3, and you would have a Jackson State coming in undefeated. That in itself
creates
a buzz that everybody's going to be in there in terms of what it looks like, in terms of that matchup. And you're going to get a lot of side effects. You're going to get a lot of other folks that want to go in there and see that game too, because they be like, hey, man, that means something.
Yeah.
So
Last stadium will be packed.
Right. So that's not going to be an issue. So that's where I'm saying about that. So I don't doubt the things that you said, and it makes sense, but I just wanted to give a little more perspective. Mike, where did you see this Eastern Division as a breakdown?
Quite naturally, I had Jackson State kind of running the gamut, actually. I think they are chasing perfection. Two of the things that at times may have hurt Jackson State, I felt, were inconsistency or undiscipline at times. There are a couple of games that they easily could have lost, but they in the second half, they put their pedal to the metal and pulled it out. And I think today, in talking to some of the players and Coach Prime, I like you. I sensed more of a focus, I guess, to use your word. But I think the execution piece they'll fix, and of course the offensive line. They brought in 5-6 offensive linemen, so I think they'll fix it. And I don't see the tie situation. So if anything, maybe it'll be a 2-horse race for second between Alabama A&M and FAMU. From my perspective, I don't see the Mobile as being something that could potentially be a foothold or pigeonhole for Jackson State. I think Jackson State travels well if you're bringing the crowd factor into it. Yeah, so I think Alabama A&M will be up for that game. Winning,
so they travel better.
But to your point, they are going to have to get up for every game because they're literally the hunted. So they're
still college. I mean, you have some of the best things, Alabama and all of it's hard.
It is difficult, but I'd still have them at first place.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, that's what they said here too. Mississippi Valley State, 35 points, 6, which is going to surprise a lot of folks. Bethune-Cookman at 56 points. Number 4 is Alabama State with 60 points. They had 1 first place vote.
Yep.
Alabama A&M 87 points. They had 2 first place votes. Yeah, FAMU 108 points with 7 first place votes. and you had Jackson State 116 points with 12 first-place votes. So I thought that was fascinating when you talk about what the coaches and the SID said in that perspective. And what the beautiful thing about this, we'll get to come back like you reminded us last year at the end of the season. And you kind of said, I think y'all might not understand the depth of the Eastern Division. I'm going to pat you on the back. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not doubting your capability of breaking this stuff down. Yeah. You showed that you certainly know what you're talking about.
Oh, man.
And you came back a little bit and said, you know, and you didn't gloat about it, but the numbers spoke for themselves in terms of what the East did to the West, which is why I have my overall mix in terms of I still believe the East is going to take it to the West.
Yes.
It may not be quite as dominant, but I think they'll still show how strong the Eastern Division and Western Division. Now, what's funny is that's just a one game when it gets to the championship game, though.
Yeah, you know that the East reminds you of that old Big East back when Villanova, Georgetown, Syracuse, and St. John. Yeah, it's getting that look. So it's getting that look.
Remember last year, this time you did have us do the individual, the best three, the top 3 teams in the East, top 3 teams in the West. Yeah, and Charles reminded us. I think I for one had the 3 best teams coming out of the West, and a lot of other people had.
I did too.
I don't think that's the case this year. It's quite evident.
Right. Yeah, you won't get me making that mistake twice.
I
it might run
up
to come out to something else, but it ain't gonna because I said it. He ain't gonna be able to come back and be like, so "What you think about that?"
Exactly.
Hey, I told you that was wrong.
I'm not gonna give CB that leverage just to come back. See, I told y'all.
No, not this time. Well, we'll come back with some of those matchups, but before we do this and we end this segment, what are some of the key head-to-head Eastern Division games that you're looking for? I guess I kind of snuck out there and showed you mine with Jackson State, Alabama A&M, FAMU, obviously hosting Alabama A&M, Tallahassee. Anything else stands out to you in terms of matchups you're looking forward to?
Looking forward to the matchup of whenever Alabama A&M and FAMU get together. That should be a go. Watch this one. Mississippi Valley State is going to punch somebody like they catch somebody every year. And there are a couple of matchups that I think will be interesting, at least with Valley and FAMU. I think that could be very interesting. Valley had them, on the ropes at a point in Itabena last year. So I think you got a couple of matchups that are going to be very intriguing to where everybody's going to look toward that game that weekend. So it's going to be real interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated about that. This is not obviously Eastern or Western, but the biggest one, East-West game that I'm looking at in terms of rivalries at Alcorn at Mississippi Valley State. So it'll be interesting there. Yeah. The crossover. Let's get into our last break. We'll be right back and close things out for you, give you a couple of key matchups and some other thoughts, and we'll break down a little bit of the preseason offensive, preseason defensive player, and your thoughts on some of the first-team players and what that shake that out before we get your final thoughts and give it a close for today.
Are you ready? It's time. The inaugural Urban NerdCon is coming to Montgomery, Alabama, July 29th to the 31st. Blurs, nerds, and geeks from across the universe will converge on the capital city to see celebrity guests such as The Last Dragon, Tybok, Megan Tandy, and voice actor Dave Fennoy.
Hey, how you doing? I'm voice actor Dave Fennoy with a shout out to all my geeks, freaks, and urban nerds. Just want to let you know I'm going to be there and I want to meet you at the Urban NerdCon Gaming and Cosplay event. It's happening July 29th through the 31st in Montgomery, Alabama. Hope you want to meet me as much as I want to meet you.
So join us by visiting theurbannerdcon.net for ticket and vendor information. This will be the premier blurred event in the universe. Theurbannerdcon.net. Our heroes, our villains, our stories, everyone's con. See you there.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit. Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio. That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds. You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Dr. Cavill's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Closing out our last segment, let's get into this preseason Offensive Player of the Year, preseason Defensive Player of the Year. No surprise here, right? Offensive Player of the Year was Shedeur Sanders, Jackson State University. Defensive Player of the Year was Isaiah Lamb, Florida A&M University. Man, that Orange Blossom Classic shapes up just in terms of key players, offense, defense. It just shapes up really nice staff storylines. Who first and two preseason picks, who were up to everything last year. Beautiful matchup, two solid head coaches. Boy, that's nice. Let me go down first team, first team. We won't get into the second team. This is the first team. Preseason. Quarterback, already told you, obviously, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson State. Running back, Gary Quarles, Alabama A&M. Running back, Caleb Johnson, Mississippi Valley State. Offensive lineman, Dallas Black, Southern. Offensive lineman 2, Mark Evans II, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Offensive lineman 3, Drake Centers, Texas Southern University. Offensive lineman 4, Tony Gray, Jackson State. Offensive lineman 5, Robert Alston, Alabama State. Wide receiver, Abdul Fatih Ibrahim, Alabama A&M. Wide receiver 2 is Xavier Smith, Florida A&M. Tight end, Kamari Everett, Bethune-Cookman. First team defense, defensive lineman 1, Sundiata Anderson, Grambling State. Defensive lineman 2, Ronnie Thomas, Mississippi Valley State. Defensive lineman 3, Jason Dumas, Southern. Still sounds kind of weird, you know.
Yeah.
Defensive lineman 4, Jordan Lewis, Southern. Boy, but you talking about pairing those two together. I do love what that looks like in terms of that front line. Man, if they can kind of play off each other, that defensive line can run havoc. And then obviously, like I said, you got to transfer defensive back. That defense could be special. It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. So we don't necessarily think of Dooley in terms of the defensive mode, but he's put together some pretty good defensive elite over the years in terms of leading it. Get back into it. Linebacker, Isaiah Lamb, FAMU. Linebacker, Aubrey Miller, Jackson State. He's playing with a chip on his shoulders. You think a lot of people forgot about him. Not us. Certainly not me. Linebacker 3, Monroe Beard III, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Coach Doc Gamble talked a little bit about Monroe. He said he's ready, and he thinks he has a pretty good core of linebackers, so it's fascinating to see what that means. Defensive back 1, Amari Hill Robinson, Bethune-Cookman. Defensive back 2, Rajah Davis, Alabama State. Defensive back 3, Shiloh Sanders, Jackson State. Defensive back 4, B.J. Bowler, FAMU. Preseason first team special teams. Place kicker was Jose Romo Martinez, FAMU. Punter, Josh Sanchez, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Long snapper, Thomas Renee, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Return specialist, Isaiah Bolden, Jackson State. Jackson State, deservedly so, in my fault, were loaded in terms of talent, first and second team. I'm not going to get into that. Any surprises for you, Mike, in terms of the first team or even preseason offensive, defensive players? Any surprises to you, or just in general, what do you think about the first team offense, first team defense?
First of all, there's a whole lot of FAMU and Jackson State in the list. So just the sheer number, numerical representation lets you know how loaded both teams are. It sets up that game big time, as you alluded to. I always look at who's not there. I didn't see many Alcorn State folks there. And they were picked. Some thought they could win the SWAC West. They were picked second. So I didn't see a whole lot of folks there. So I'm wondering, that's a misnomer. If they're picked that strong, why don't we have any of their players?
Yeah, and even when you dip down the second team, they don't have a lot. You have 1, 2 on the second team offensive, and then you have 1 in terms of the second team defense. So it's not just a whole lot there. So great point when you talk about Duffy is the real deal. No question about what that looks like. But I think you make a really great point when you talk about that matchup. Let me go to you, Charles, in terms of anything that stood out to you, or as Mike said, that kind of shook you because you didn't see it on the list in terms of mainly the first team, but you can look at it in terms of second team as well.
Cameron Craig. He is a player that's unsung on Jackson State's defense, but a complete playmaker from a strong safety standpoint. I saw him on the second team defense, but when you talk about a player that patterns his game much like Honey Badger, he is
switch over
because he creates so much havoc. He comes off the edge, comes up the middle, he drops back in coverage, does a great job in terms of being a rover all over the defensive field. So that was a name that stood out to me in terms of being on the second team defense. But it's well represented in terms of taking.
Yep. As we tune it in, your final thoughts there. Just as you said, the person you left off, didn't want you to go back through that, but just in case a little bit, at least talk about the person that you were referencing that's an unsung hero of Jackson State.
Cameron Craig is an individual who is a playmaker on Jackson State's defense. Young man who, wherever he's lined up, you have to account for him.
Yeah,
he's one of those type players, and when I say playmaker, he creates turnovers. Whether
I like that you brought that up.
Whether he's stripping the ball, whether he's making an interception, he's a true playmaker. And like I said, he reminds you a lot of the Honey Badger in terms of the area that he covers on the field and things of that nature. Yeah,
I didn't want to get lost in this mix here. One thing I did want to ask about, and I'll stick with you before you turn over, and then you can hand it to Mike to get his final thoughts. We'd be remiss if you didn't catch when they opened it up with Charles when he talked about the state of the SWAC. One of the things I was interested in, he's talking about the financial components that he was really looking at when he talked about in 2 or 3 years he sees the SWAC revenues continue to go up. He talked about they had their largest distribution of funds to each of the institutions this year ever, essentially in the SWAC. He talked about the fact that those revenues in a couple of years will exceed 3 FBS programs based on what the rate is for some of those G5 programs in the next 2 or 3 years. And he says the conference is in solid grounds in terms of what they're able to do, not just in attendance, what we see today with the interest, with over 200 credential media here, increasing significantly over, I think, 150 or something last year. With that increase going up, the interest, more television games on HBCU Go that you talked about, the games that are going, significant television secondary deal. So I thought that was fascinating in terms of the state of the SWAC. Any thoughts on that or any additional things that he talked about that I made?
It tells you the growth of this conference. It tells you the eyes of the nation are on this conference. I often have said, we're in the renaissance, if you will, of HBCU athletics in terms of student athletes, in terms of the eyes of the world being on this conference. Coach Prime has said, the spotlight is going to be bright, but it's also going to show you blemishes. So, that's huge moving forward. But anytime you talk about distribution of revenues being at an all-time high, that sticks out. That's one of those things that you kind of keep in the back of your head, that in terms of the growth of this conference. And we saw the SWAC on its back a few years ago, and to see it bounce back to where it is beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and I want you to hold it because I want you to give your closing statements, but I want to tie a bow in terms of what you said there, framing it. If you go back and listen to the Jaguar Journal last week and 2 weeks ago on Carlos Brown's show, he had Banks on there. And Banks didn't tell everything, but he alluded to some stuff about the goal of FBS and what that looks like in the year that they need to do it as a conference. That's where it's going in terms of what they're doing. He was really solid, and this is from AD in terms of where he sees the conference able to go is distribution. And then he mentioned one of those that he said he believed the lowest payout for conference members coming out this year was over 500,000.
Wow.
So he said that online. So I hadn't seen the numbers, but if that's the case, and the indication what Charles is talking about, that money is becoming significant in terms of the payout and what's going forward. So that's something to keep your eyes on. And I know a lot of folks want him to tell you that. And I'm not saying that I'd be happy to hear what he's saying. But I do think one thing that I look at in terms of what's out there in terms of the norms of practices, commissioners across the board do not provide their financials. Now, the media folks that are able to do that and have a background and find sources, they're able to get it from different frameworks. So you'll see ESPN provide a revenue distribution from various FBS conferences, and that's because they've been able to go and find various sources to provide them a general framework of what those notification is. And I think as you continue to see the interest in the SWAC, you'll find folks that are able to look in various frameworks, and I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see those numbers come up. Wow. To see that. Last thing I want to do before you do that, before you pass the headphones to let Mike do his close, what are your final closing thoughts on the 2022 SWAC Football Media Day here in Birmingham?
Another successful SWAC Media Day. Over 200 credentialed media here. And just from a brotherhood standpoint, it's great seeing all of our colleagues in one place. And since the pandemic, we're so accustomed to Zooming, but to actually lay eyes on a lot of our colleagues and share stories and share our predictions and our analysis, it's always a special time. And there's new media that's getting into this space now. So, not only you're talking about the growth of the conference and the growth of revenue, but you're talking about the growth of HBCU media covering all our schools, and more is better. There's enough for everyone to eat.
Yeah, and the dedicated spaces that you have for not only HBCU sports, not only the SWAC, but also folks that are dedicated to covering an HBCU institution.
Exactly.
You have that going over there with North Carolina A&T, to give them a shout out. They have a dedicated space where somebody talks about that. I believe Hampton has a dedicated space where somebody talks about that. You have Tennessee State that has a couple of folks that are dedicated to covering Tennessee State sports. Obviously, what we do on the Black College Sports Network, O&G, in terms of dedicated space covering FAMU athletics. You got a dedicated space from 1876 Sports and Podcasts covering Prairie View A&M University. You have the pregame show covering Jackson State University in terms of the dedicated space. You have Carlos Brown, who's been one of the longest in the business doing that, who essentially in a lot of ways dedicates coverage of Southern athletics in terms of what that looks like. So I think that is a strong formula in terms of what takes in place of covering those sports. So to your point, that new media, both in terms of covering HBCU sports, covering the SWAC, and covering some of those that are doing things to cover dedicated space, I think it's fascinating, and it's a positive thing overall in terms of where things are going in terms of additional coverage. Go ahead and pass it to Mike so I can get some of his final thoughts. I know, Mike, you got in here and you were able to walk around the room as we were doing some of those interviews. You got out there in some space and were able to get some coverage in terms of the landscape, which is next door. We have the coaches at the tables and players before as they're doing the mix. Also, obviously, going in between the coverage on ESPN3 with Jay Walker, Tiffany Green. Talk about what you saw in that mix in that space out there. What were your thoughts on that?
First of all, I saw lots of, I guess, the brotherhood engagement. If you look out in the audience, there was, Charles already talked to it, that the increased presence of media, administrators, but there was a lot of just, hey, goodness, great to see you. Hadn't seen you in a while. I thought the engagement with the players and the coaches, particularly this year, I thought I saw a lot. This this is very qualitative, just me saying it. It just seemed like there was a lot more coming out from the players and the coaches this year if you engaged them at the tables. You know, in years past, it seems maybe, you know, some holding back. But that, you know, is one indicator that, you know, there's a lot of excitement going into the season. A lot of teams, there's a lot of parity in here. You know, we know who's picked to go number one on both sides of the coin, but there are a lot of teams that are ready for the season. They're ready to get it, and you got that when you actually talk to them at the table. So to me, the engagement level was up. So, and then on the stage, it was, you know, Tiffany and Jay Walker did a great job with each one. For me, it seemed like, I know there was a structured format, and I got here a little late, unfortunately, but it seemed like it was a little bit longer. Maybe there were more questions, or maybe the format.
I think you had the more media, so everybody was having folks who were pulling folks in time, and they wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance. So I think they extended the time that we normally have gotten over the years to make sure that more people could get access. And to the credit of the coaches, the ADs or whatever, they were willing to stay a little longer to get interviews. Willie stayed around before he came back to make sure that he had the interview that I was able to give early on the show. But you had a lot of coaches that were making the rounds to make sure that they got to media, because they also know the importance of sharing the study. And again, I think in a lot of ways that goes back to them understanding themselves, with new coaches that come from different places in the NFL, about sharing that in general in terms of what Coach Prime has done to make sure he puts his program out there. A lot of folks know the importance of meeting that in that same place and saying that we need to make sure that we meet and share our stuff so we can be competitive in the recruiting landscape and making sure that we're marketing and branding our institution. Again, I see that as a positive in terms of getting the information out. So I think that's part of it too. I did want to go back and give you a chance maybe to talk about what do you see in terms of the projection when you talked about the state of the conference, whether it's with the media day itself or some of the financials or some of the frameworks that you were hearing about the Southwestern Athletic Conference from the commissioner, Dr. Charles McCullough.
Well, yeah, for me, to explain that, I'll go a little bit corporate. When you look at the success of an organization, you have leading and lagging indicators. And we've talked about them. We haven't called them that, but we talked about the increased revenue distribution. It's one indicator. The increased media coverage, sponsorship. You look at attendance. These are all indicators at where the organization is going. They all trend upward. And that is a visual indicator of how this SWAC is going, and shows no sign of slippage or stopping. And to have that, you have to have great leadership and organization in place. You have that. And so I just think today was just indicative. And I think Charles eloquently put it, you know, he was asked questions about, I caught an interview and I had a chance to chime in. He was asked about churning and the mega conference, and is there a chance that, you know, the SWAC will be that mega conference? And Charles politely turned around and pointed and said, well, you have a mega conference. It's called the SWAC. And he said, we are not going to be exactly copycat. We're growing. We've added FAMU. We've added Bethune. But we're not going to just immediately jump and have golf and tennis players going from C to shining C just to be like others. We're going to do what's right and grow in the rate that is best for the SWAC. And I thought that was quite pointed as well. Very good point, and eloquently stated by Charles McClellan. So those things stuck out of me, those leading and lagging indicators, and that statement there.
Leave it to Mike Business to give you these business frameworks, terminology, bulls up, bears down. Yeah, perfectly said. Last thing I'll give you before we close up, what is your last thoughts that you want to share in terms of Southwestern Athletic Conference Media Day 2022 here in Birmingham, Alabama at the Sheraton?
Oh, man, I think, you know, CB hit the nail on the head. It was the camaraderie, the brotherhood, you know, just being here. You know, I don't think Brian, AD, us three, I don't think we've been in one place for some time. I can't remember the last time we've all been here at one place.
And we all live in Houston.
And we,
so, well, there's three of us. But even the bigger picture, as Drew pointed out earlier, and we did get a chance to take it, this is one of the first times since we have brought the group together and expanded what we do on BCSN that we basically had all the team players here, and we took a picture to kind of celebrate what we were able to do. So I'm glad that you bring that to my attention. Make sure you share that. Great point.
Yeah, so that stands out. I can't get enough of the increased media. I mean, I saw some media folks that had not been here in the last 2 or 3 years and stood out. So that was a takeaway for me. So.
Great point. Well, that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports from Inside the Lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock right here on the Black College Sports Network. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news. We'll go back and give you some updates on the CIAA. Didn't get a chance to break down that. They had a great time. A.D. Drew was able to provide you that information yesterday, but we will, on the news of HBCU's, break down and share some updates there. I was surprised to some degree that in terms of the East, they still had the big bad Bulldogs at the top.
Yep.
I guess you got to beat them to defeat them, what they saying. So I thought that stood out, and I was curious about where they would be ranked. That's where they were picked. But we'll break down the rest of that and show you what that looks like on this coming Tuesday. We'll give you that information. But follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, DrKenyattaCavil. Check out Twitter, as we always have that discussion. I'm sure this evening we'll get a chance to break down some things and share it with you as we kind of wind down a little bit. Check out Instagram. Got some great pictures for you to do that. We had great interviews as I had a team player I wanted to shout out in terms of getting some work, taking the camera work, and sharing some interviews on Twitter in terms of what that looks like. So that was important. I want to shout out
Raymond Holly.
Raymond Holly, that's here, that's put in a lot of work, getting a lot of pictures there.
Tailgate partner.
Yeah, 3P tailgaters.
3P tailgater.
Getting it done in terms of what that looks like. I thought that was important to share that work in so many different ways. So I wanted to make sure I got that shout out in there. Who else? A lot of folks text me all day. I try to see if I can get these magazines and pregame shows that folks asked for. I collected a couple of extra ones, but hopefully I didn't get hit up because some folks did that. Shout out to brother DJ Chris Cruz, who was here holding it down for Prairie View A&M University as he was big in getting that done. So I wanted to make sure gave him. Brother Herman Shelton flew in just for this and make sure that he was in the backdrop to get some live interviews from players so we could get that part while we were doing the interviews. So this is a team effect that puts this all together. So I thought it was important to share that in terms of what gets done. And I wanted to also say thanks to Mike Washington. Thanks to Charles Bishop. They put in a lot of work and a lot of time, put up a lot of things because I drive, a lot of questions and a lot of efforts that I want, and they have their own spaces and things they're trying to do. And I try to make sure I'm open to make sure they can do that, but they put up and make sure that we continue to deliver for Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. So I want to say openly to everybody, I appreciate you all. Don't always get to say that as much as you should. First drink's on me. Oh, wasn't supposed to say that on TV because I don't know everybody know that. But yeah, you know it. They're going to make sure they get in the pocket, so we'll do that big. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We'll talk with you soon. Charles, Mike,
lecture,
dismiss.